All right, boy. Well, we're both heavily into rugby. Me, not so much anymore, but you clearly still. So I'm
Yeah.
sure we're going to jump straight into that. But just so everybody knows who you are and who is this strange guy behind a beautiful accent, if you want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction, mate.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Jason, Zimbo, born in Zimbabwe, and grew up in one of the best places in the world.
Hey.
Traveled a little bit overseas, playing a bit of rugby in Germany, of all places, and then settled in Cape Town for a good 15 years. But recently relocated back to Zim to bring my family up in this lifestyle that we much love. And then on the rugby front, I'm still the national team manager of the Sables, and we're I suppose on a quest to try qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 1991. So yeah, and that's starting in those qualifiers are in July this year. So excited,
Wow.
a lot of work in the background preparing for that big event.
Wow, that's incredible. And talk to me about the grassroots rugby in Zimbabwe.
Historically, rugby is quite strong at schoolboy level. There is a bit of a divide between your private sector, your private schooling, as well as your government school. You know, in the government schooling, football is very strong, as everywhere in Africa is. But on the private sector, you know, rugby was kind of part of a culture, part of what you did, especially when you went to one of the big 8 kind of schools in Zim. So, you know, once you were in those schools, there was definitely a pathway through rugby, and it was a great, I would say, a friend maker. You know, through sports, you end up building friendships for life. But the issue that we have more recently is, I suppose, COVID aside, but you know, rugby people, sport has taken a bit of a back step on the growth level. I'm not too sure why. Also, one of the reasons why I've moved back is I feel that there's a great impetus that we can put onto development of rugby in Zim. You know, the Zimbabwean people in stature and in terms of the genetics are incredible people, in terms of strength and guile and speed. You know, so it's a matter of maybe just taking the game a little bit further outside of that private schooling environment and try and take it to the areas where a lot of the kids play football and haven't really picked up a rugby ball, to also set up academies and identify little development hubs. So a big goal and a big drive from a sevens kind of circuit, as well as the 15 side. And we're hoping over the next 5 years that we can really create more David Pococks and the beasts of life, but for ourselves. You know, we don't want these players leaving us. We want to nurture, grow them, and let them stay here so we can go further with our rugby. So big plans in the pipeline regarding that.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, you know, South Africa, Zimbabwe, like you look at those nations and be like, the pool of talent, like raw talent, untouched, untrained, like unnurtured talent is insane, right? And if you're able to kind of nurture them in a way of like, yeah, okay, we're going to start training, you're going to get in the weight room, fantastic, that's going to develop. But also, like, here it is just a pigskin, play around with it, develop some sort of skill and hand-eye coordination with it, because the only people that's going to have hand-eye coordination is going to be the goalkeepers, right? Playing footy.
Yeah.
Just playing around with it and then just let them kind of do their thing. Honestly, like, it would be insane. It would be insane.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a few programs running. Tag Rugby, which is in partnership with, I believe, a trust in England. They're out here also setting up a few kind of hubs, which is pretty cool. And they do, you know, from really young kids, you know, so we're talking 4 or 5 year olds. They're playing the tag element, which is awesome to see. Before COVID, I think that, you know, at any certain class, they had 200-300 kids. And it was awesome, you know, at that level. The problem we have is purely the professionalism of rugby in Africa. And I limit that to maybe Zim as well, because what we find is our schoolboy level rugby is very good and quite competitive. But as soon as the kids hit 18, there's not much else keeping them in Zim, you know, during your I suppose, your adolescent years or your early adolescent years. So they
Mm.
end up going to UCT or in South Africa, or they go to England, or they go to America to further their studies. And, maybe 2 out of the 10 continue playing rugby. The rest kind of phase away because there's no real interest, or the rugby pool, particularly in South Africa, is so big that you kind of get lost to the system. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap. So from the 18-year-old to the 22-year-old, where you can become professional, or at least have the right infrastructure in place to give the kids an opportunity to become professional rugby players in Zimbabwe, and then potentially further their career elsewhere. Instead of having to go and hunt them down when they're 26, 27 and say, hey, why don't you come back and play for us? We kind of want to start and bridge that gap early. So as I rightfully said, there's a few projects burning in the background. One huge project that we're busy with, which will probably be official by the end of January. And that could really change the landscape of rugby in Zim, as well as the development of rugby in Zimbabwe going forward.
Wow. What do you think is the main factor of kids leaving the country?
I think unfortunately the employment rate in Zim is quite low. So you have a situation where a lot of kids kind of leave school but don't really have that next opportunity to either get employed or that opportunity to get a further education. There's a couple of universities in Zim, but I think the draw card of going to South Africa produces a lifestyle or an opportunity that you potentially don't have in Zim. And a lot of the guys end up in South Africa. I was one of them. And you can make, I suppose, a decent living, or a decent chance of a living. As Zimbabwe obviously has over the years had a few issues. I'm sure it's well documented all around the world. And we're hoping to change that ideology now, and reintroduce aspects where we can give kids an option before they make the decision to leave, and not as a secondary, but as a primary. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is a lot of guys just think that the grass might be green on the other side, and they go and take a dip and then see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just providing another way, right? And another option, like you said. And I think that's really important if you want to try and increase the participation and the retention within Zimbabwe, especially within sport, right? Because we all know your career in sport is very, very short in terms of your entire life, right? And if you're like, oh, okay, I can make a few bob extra here or there, or that could potentially put me in a room with more people with more opportunities, then you're going to take it, right? That's just common sense. Everyone would take that in any sport. But being able to increase those opportunities back home would then potentially keep people back home, and that's really, really exciting.
Spot on. A lot of the boys that I speak to in England, the Donamons, Dave Ewers, those type of guys of life, where they've left, kind of after school, during school, furthered a career in rugby, got an opportunity at the Sharks or the Stormers, and then now managed to qualify as an EQP player in the UK. And conversations with them about potentially coming back have been had. But what I've understood and where I have compassion for these type of individuals is, now that they EQP qualified, that is worth its weight in gold in the Premiership. And as the sole breadwinner, and as you've rightfully said, a short kind of career in rugby, you need to maximize your opportunities, because rugby for some, 32, 33 is kind of, where a lot of the guys end up calling it. But you've got your whole life ahead of you. What does that mean if you were 26, 27, still in Zim, struggling to make ends meet, but you're playing for the passion of the game? But by the time you're 30, you've got no future and nothing to fall back on. You've got, no savings, no business acumen, no education. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys end up down that road. So, we really want to change that kind of issues and fix those issues locally. And we'll look at partnerships from an educational front, and also the broader kind of diaspora, what we call diaspora, all the Zimbabweans living all around the world, is to potentially look at helping from a business aspect, in terms of not necessarily money, but potentially helping kids get an education or a trade. Trades are are definitely the way to go if you're good with your hands and you're good with those type of things in Africa. So we'd look to having partnerships on that front where we can give kids an education or get a trade whilst playing rugby. And should rugby not work out, a trade's not bad to fall back onto.
Yeah, for sure. At least you're going to make a living, right? And you can support yourself and your family around you, right? And like I can relate that to back home of like trying to create a student athlete, right? So then they can, like you said, they can pick up a trade or a skill. So then they can have a fallback. But back home, it's like you're going to throw all your chips in one basket. You're going to go an athlete. And then if you fuck yourself over, you're done. See you later. Figure it out. Bye. But obviously the talent pool, not the talent pool, the pool of athletes in the UK is everyone wants to play football. Everyone else who doesn't want to play football wants to play rugby, or wants to play netball or whatever it is. So everyone is trying.
We're not going to talk about cricket, eh?
No, we don't talk. No, is that even a sport?
In Zim, big time. In the UK, I'm not so sure.
No, that's not my thing.
When you travel to Australia, not only when you boys travel to Australia, it seems like the heads fall off. So unfortunately, catching a bit of a hiding there. But look, we've all been down that road, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Right, we're just like the semi-final in the last Rugby World Cup, right?
Some would say that's history, but there's still scarring there, hey?
I mean, I got here maybe, I want to say 2 weeks after that game. Oh, mate, it was phenomenal. I walked into the gym I was coaching in wearing my England shirt. It was a great time. It was like, this was 8 years in the making for one game. 8 years for 80 minutes, right? But it was phenomenal.
And then you threw it away in the final.
Oh, wow. We don't speak about that one.
Who's counting?
Yeah. We did get absolutely slapped in the final. Yeah. But again, we don't speak about that. But that's South African rugby though. You know what I mean? They're just going to trundle it up the middle of the park. They're going to beat you up. And then we're going to score a couple of points.
Yeah, physically they're some of those South Africans are specimens,
it's insane.
Huge individuals. I know I've met a few of the guys and I know a few of the guys personally, and just again, I think it's culturally driven as well. When you're born in South Africa, this first sport that you pick up or the first ball you pick up is a rugby ball or a cricket ball per se. And that's bred from when you were a couple of years old, probably not as young as New Zealand. I mean, those kids start kind of with their skills when they're 3 or something, So, it's probably not as intense, but you have so much more to select from. The player pool in South Africa is so big, which means it becomes competitive. And if it's competitive, you have just standards of the game from such a young age are extremely good. And that's great because ultimately it only means good things for your national team and maybe the culture and the livelihoods of rugby, going forward. And maybe that's where we lacked a little bit, in Zim. We have a culture, but we don't have that player pool as such, and we don't have the financial backing as well as the support structure around rugby compared to South Africa. We used to, a long time ago when we kind of played in the Currie Cup previously. But that was, you can't really throw that around when you're talking 40 years ago. It's a lifetime away. So one of the things that we've tried to do is get ourselves more competitive rugby. And that's what we've done. We've obviously entered into the Currie Cup. So we're going to be playing Currie Cup First Division this year. So that's obviously not your top 8 in South Africa, but your next kind of 8. Which is great for us because maybe that's where we need to be for now to get our standards where it needs to go. And ultimately, it's not a short-term fix. This is maybe a 5, 6, 7 year plan. So, we've got a dip at the World Cup now in July, but if we don't make it, we mustn't lose hope, because if we've got a 5-year project, 2027 should be a sure bet. because everything can build up to that event. So, long-term gains, long-term fixes tend to last more and have a historically a legacy that can be left behind versus let's throw a bit of bucks at a problem and let's hope we qualify. Because that's just very short-sighted. We're never going to get there if that's the attitude. And unfortunately, I think sports is taken for granted. Besides football in Africa, sport is very much taken for granted as the professionalism. South Africa excluded, of course. And if we can change the narrative on rugby and potentially put in a professional option, for rugby in Africa, and that draws kind of professional players in a professional league of African descent, that could do wonders for the games in African countries.
For sure. And I think you would see some absolutely incredible rugby being played from African nations. Like 110%, I would put my chips in that basket. And I think it's, kind of going off what you just said, is it's creating a culture, right? It's like redefining a culture, and that's an organic thing, and it needs a lot of attention all the time. And that's not going to happen in overnight, right? And that's definitely not going to happen if you just throw money at it. Like, that never solves anything. Like, that is meticulous attention to detail over and over and over again. And I mean, like, two nations that stand out to me as you were talking was Argentina and Japan, right? Like, you look at them now, they're fucking doing absolute wonders.
More Japan than Argentina now, but the principle applies. Yeah. Argentina, we looked at the Argentina model, actually, funny enough, and we looked at how they sent a team into the junior, or I think it was the Super Sport Challenge in South Africa a couple of years ago. And they identified an age group where they sent these youngsters in. I think they were all like 20. I think it was Pablo Montero and all these guys who are now household names. But they started 5-6 years ago in this Curry Cup or the Super Sport Challenge. And, in the first year, I think these guys got hammered by every team in South Africa. They came back again, and I think in their second or their third year, they eventually won that tournament and effectively built the foundations for them to kind of put their hand up for Super Rugby, as well as obviously, improve their national opportunities, because now you've got an age group of players that are kind of playing together from the age of 20 in the same professional outfit that effectively just pick up and change their jersey, and now they're playing for Argentina. So there's not a hell of a difference in terms of patterns, structures, game plans, personnel. And that's kind of the model we looked at, and we said, right, well, hey, this was quite successful for them, but they had to travel across an ocean to play in South Africa. We're, a 2-hour flight away. So why aren't we putting our hands up? So, over time, since 2019, when we first played in the Super Sport Challenge, 2020 for everyone, and 2021 was pretty much a write-off when it came to rugby, unfortunately, due to COVID. And I suppose, God willing, 2022 will be a great rugby opportunity for us. And preparation-wise, you couldn't have asked for a better preparation going into World Cup qualifiers on our side. So, very much looking forward to it. And it'll be good for us because we'll be able to play, or at least look at a big squad of at least, call it 50, 60 players over the tournaments, because we wouldn't be able to play the Curry Cup with our potential full-strength team, because a lot of the guys have got contracts in France and playing in Australia or New Zealand, and the like. So we would only be able to get them in closer to the end of the tournament, but it gives us a great opportunity at the beginning of that tournament to look at players and develop new players from the younger age group. So quite excited.
Hell yeah. Like, you train and you play with fucking teammates for 5 years. Like, you can't replicate that connection you have with those teammates. Like, it's indescribable. You know what I mean? Obviously, you've played the game. I know I've played the game. Anyone else who's played any type of sport will understand that. And being able to develop through that with also a mixing squad, and if you can get that with a larger squad, that's a very, very dangerous setup. That can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah, so time will tell. But quite happy with I suppose the prep so far. We played in a tournament in November, actually, against Brazil and Namibia. We ended up beating Brazil. They were ranked, I think, 10 places ahead of us in World Rugby. So it was a good kind of win for us. And we took Namibia pretty close up until about the 60th minute. And then they kind of ran away with the game. But we've identified maybe where we've gone wrong. And I suppose just creating depth again in structures and in players and in pools, you're able to nullify that gap between, say, Namibia and ourselves, or Kenya and ourselves and Namibia. Because at the end of the day, we do all look upon Namibia as the leader in African rugby, because they've gone to the most recent World Cups. And we understand that that's kind of the peg that we need to be at, or better at, to qualify. So it's good to play against Namibia at a full strength kind of situation, because to identify your weaknesses afterwards is, I suppose, good preparation for when it really counts.
Hell yeah. Like, it's a man in the arena quote, right? Like, you got to get in there, figure it out, see what happens when the intensity is high, and then you're away from the chessboard and you can actually look at it from all angles. It's like, no. Go do it with moving parts and people trying to run at you, going at a million miles an hour with a rugby ball, and we call it fun, right? Like that's definitely the way you learn and grow. Like something that I'm really interested in, like coming from kind of my side of the strength and conditioning scene, is like, what's that like in Zim? Because like I played over in South Africa and we went to Pretoria, Joburg, and Cape Town, right? And I remember one school stood out to me in Joburg, which was Monument, right?
Oh, yeah.
This insane facilities, obviously it's a very prestigious school, but their entire day for their athletes will be kind of evolving around how and when they can train. And then they're fed and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, wow, like no wonder they are built like brick shit houses and they can actually play ball. Like no wonder. We've got football players on the bench for subs because we need to make up numbers. You know what I mean? Just this like council sort of school. But what is it like, the S&C, the training outside, off the pitch, in the weight room, in a skill session? What's that like?
I think, I speak under correction now, but maybe if I'm going back to when I was at school and you do a comparison to the monuments or the pole gyms or the pole rosters of life, the big challenge was the S&C side of things locally in Zim. You kind of had a decent meal, you kind of trained your ass off, you played very well, you did what you needed to do, but there was never the emphasis on, hey, you got to gym 5-6 times a week, you got to eat this type of food, you got to have this type of protein. We never had that. I was fortunate enough to go to I think it was the under-19 World Cup in Durban in 2004, I think it was. And we lined up against I think one of the first games was Samoa. I think the kid at the time was 16, ended up being Census Johnson. And, I was loose head. I think I came on loose head. He came on a tight head, and he was 16. He had just got all his tribal tattoos, but this oak was huge. I mean, he was 120 kgs at 16 years old. They did the whole traditional tribal tattoo thing with the reed. I mean, the oak's pain threshold must be through the roof. And I have to scrum against this lighty. And I'm maybe touching on 105 as a lucid, in peak condition, because that's the best I can be. And I saw my ass, and I think that was the reality of maybe, and Samoa maybe not the best example of that, but the theory there is, given the right environment, the right opportunity to thrive, the right infrastructure or the right coaching from an S&C point of view, you're literally taking your game from a 70%er to an 85, 90%er. And that's the difference between, a 60-0 or 25-0. And I think we ended up losing to Samoa 27-0 or something in that particular game. But you've literally taken, I suppose, a bunch of farm kids in Zim that have kind of thrown the ball around for a while and kind of, played decent rugby, but with no S&C. I think I only picked up dumbbells when I was like 17, 18, that's the first time you started conditioning and not even properly. I think properly I left when I left school. When I went to Germany, I think I was 20. I actually did a proper gym program and kind of trained, with that involved. So I think it lacks big time, but now we're also talking a few years ago. Now, even looking at the national team, we found that I think the big emphasis for us is that we have the skill set, we have the talent, we have the pool, the player pool. We're probably not conditioned as well as we should be, and that's also because players play all around the world at all different times of the year. So, or potentially stay in Zimbabwe and they're inactive for a period of time. So when you bring all of that together and you put it in a big kind of pot and you say, right, like everybody needs to be peaking at 100% at a certain time of the season, it's almost impossible for that to happen because just fatigue and bodies are at a different standard throughout the year. So we're trying to now, and what we have done is we've hired as a consultant, the Blitzbook S&C coach. And he's come on board to guide us and help us professionalize our S&C side of things in our preparation, as well as our training programs, to ensure that we're peaking at the right time and the players are obviously performing at the optimum level, rather than saying, we're going to have a 2-hour training session today and you're going to hit the shit out of each other because that's what you do. Now he's saying, no, you can't do that for 2 hours. Maybe you can do it for 10 minutes. And this is what you should do, and this is how you should do it. So we're learning. We're definitely not pros at the S&C side of things. It can definitely be better. I think there's a huge opportunity in Zimbabwe for that to be introduced more professionally, even from a schoolboy point of view. If they started doing that at a younger age, potentially at these private schools or even at government institutes or at academy level, you're giving these kids the best possible chance. Unfortunately, size is a massive factor in rugby these days. Speed, strength. And I suppose we shouldn't take away from the mental aspect of being a professional athlete. So these are the boxes that you now need to tick to even give yourself a chance. Never mind put your hand up, just to even be noticed. So we're needing to give that more to, I think, our youngsters if they're going to really kick on in the professional environments.
I think that last point of giving yourself a chance is really, really important, right? Because now you need to do A all the way through to Z to just put yourself in a position where maybe you can play a little bit of ball, and that's it. 100%. Like back in the day, it's like, oh, you turned up to training, great, because we got 13 men, you're in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, cool. Like I can only make like 50 minutes and then I'm blowing out my ass. It's like, cool.
Yeah. Well, you're the fat kid at 13, 14. You're like, okay, you're
going to play pro. Yeah, I played loose back in the day. Okay. Yeah.
I've only ever lived in the front row, so I don't know what it's like anywhere else.
No, I mean, although it's too much running.
I do feel like I was a tight head trapped in it. I was a fly half trapped in a tight head's body, but I think tight heads feel the same way.
Every tight head says the same thing. Every time they get the ball in the back line, they try and chip and chase, and it goes backwards.
That was my move. Chip and chase. Yeah, good fun.
I stepped someone once in a game. One time. I gave him a little side shuffle and stepped him, and I did. It was half there, right? I stepped him and handed him off. It wasn't really an actual step, and I will never let anybody forget it. Phenomenal.
You live off that memory for the rest of your life, eh?
Yeah, that's it. That was my one move. That and out the back door passes because of Sonny Bill. Like he made that thing absolutely.
We've all given it a go.
Oh, 100%. And again, it goes backwards, like all the way backwards. Yeah, I go.
100%.
Where did that ball go? Yeah, like I cannot wait to see the specimens coming out of Zimbabwe from the training, right?
Sure.
Obviously, that's where my head goes, and I'm super passionate about the deep dive and the training aspect. I went down that route rather than the coaching of rugby, and taking the talent and being like, okay, we're now going to create a pathway for you to be nurtured, and now we're also going to coach you outside of the game. Honestly, it's going to be some freaks.
We can only hope so. I think that's the idea, at least, and I think all roads lead to doing exactly that. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
No.
All these countries that do extremely well have those programs in place. A great team at the moment that is on the rise is a team, Chile. They've come from nowhere, but their program is 5 years old. They didn't just get to where they are overnight. I think not even 5 years ago, they were something 70th in the world or something. The Oaks didn't even pick up a rugby ball. And now they got a shot at qualifying for a World Cup. I think they've got to beat America, if I'm not mistaken. And Uruguay is a good example of how far they've come. We played Uruguay in the under-20 World Cup, under-19 World Cup when I played in 2004. And we beat them. But now they're challenging not just for to just qualify for the World Cup, but they've qualified as number one in Americas. So it shows you maybe, okay, Zim beat them at a 1920 level, but look how they've progressed. I mean, they're a shoe-in now for America. We're still fighting the good fight, to try and qualify. And I think, again, a good development program, identify the talent early and give them an opportunity. And I think when preparation meets opportunity, things happen. And good to them, good to those countries. Portugal's another one. We've built strong ties with Portugal. We'd love to play them. We tried to play them in 2020, but COVID happened. We tried to get across there. And actually this year as well, try to get across there and play them. And they've also done very well. And I think they're sitting second, potentially in the European kind of second division there to qualify for the World Cup as well. So, these are the countries that we look to I suppose, copy, but come with our own flair and our own attributes and our own style of rugby. And like I say, the specimens that are produced as Africans in the first place is just every kid's got a six-pack. It's not like the Europeans or where the Oaks got fish and chips, for 7 times a week.
It's too much bread and cheese.
Yeah, bread and cheese, and when you get older, beer. So the quality of the athlete the potential, should I say, of the quality of the athlete is phenomenal. We just need to nurture that now and actually just take it from, hey, this kid kind of looked after himself, to ensure that he's prime beef, so to speak. He is going to knock the lights out. And a few of the guys, I think there's a particular player of ours, Tsep Simondu, he's playing in France, but what a specimen of a person in terms of physique. Incredible, incredible physique. But all the guys in our team have got a physique second to none. But they've put in a lot of hard effort as well. And it's good for them to go away and I suppose play in professional kind of teams and outfits in the Pro D2 and all these other places, because there's a standard that they kind of get themselves to and they want to keep themselves there. But, the problem with that is we're talking single-digit % of players in Zimbabwe end up getting that far. We've got to really up that professionalism and the quality and the standard of rugby in Zim to take that 5-6% of players really making a way for themselves in the game to 15-20% of players potentially playing all over the world. And it doesn't have to be in Africa. You can make your name for yourself and then move on to Saracens or move on to wherever you want to move on to, because you've got that opportunity, which is all the Oaks ever want, is just opportunity, and to play the game they love. So we've got to do something about that as administrators. And I believe we're on the right track. Nothing happens overnight, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, but, we've been on this path for 2 years now. I reckon this year will be a huge year for us. Just if we do qualify for the World Cup, and as I mentioned, there's one or two I want to say opportunities up our sleeve that we're finalizing, and should that be finalized in the next month or two, I can only see the horizon of rugby in Zimbabwe go leaps and bounds, which is exciting to be part of a project like that, because you're really making a difference in people's lives. And that's really what matters at the end of the day. Rugby should be a unifying sport, but you should be trying to make a difference. It's not about winning or losing in its entirety, but it's about saying, hey, I took this kid from a nothing and I've given him an opportunity in life. And that's a cool story to have. And we've got a few of those guys already, but it's not enough. We've got to do more.
Yeah, to facilitate it, to help people's lives, right? We use sport to better ourselves rather than sport is the be all and end all. It's like, no, it's much bigger than that. We just love doing adult PE, right? We just love kind of throwing a pigskin around and hitting each other with our shoulders. But other than
Yeah,
that, like it's
yeah,
so much more in whatever sport, in whatever capacity. Sport is so
I-
much more. I think you and I are in total agreement there of sport is and should be used to unify rather than divide, right? The world likes to throw stones at people's glass houses and argue who sticks bigger. And it's like, let's just play a bit of
I
sport,
don't-
right?
yeah,
Let's
doesn't
just
really.
throw a cricket ball, throw a rugby ball, get in the pool and swim, whatever it is. Let's just play a little bit of sport and see everybody come together. We'll have a beer at the end and give each other a fucking hug.
Yeah, that's what it should be. Hey, and there's
Man.
so many negative things in life these days that you're struggling, everybody's struggling with, and everybody's got a story,
Mm.
and if you can take them away from that story for a period of time and give them an opportunity or give them hope or just give them a meal or just, I don't know, just create a friendship with someone, that just goes a hell of a long way, from kind of changing the narrative that we're all living in at the moment, doom and gloom, and what's my future, and it's all negative, and we can't travel anywhere and we can't do anything, because you're being, let's not go into the COVID aspect because I think we all have different opinions on that matter. But the reality is that sport tends to, for me at least, become an escape from reality. I can be a different person potentially if I need to be on a rugby field. I
Hmm.
can live a different life through sports, or I can just escape and say, hey, like I enjoy playing golf. So I enjoy just turning my phone off and getting on a golf course and hitting a white little ball into a little hole 600 meters away. Some people think that's crazy, but for me, I get to turn off. And that for me is why I enjoy that sport. And it's challenging as well. We won't go down that route, but so that's why people do sport, is even if you're not that good at it, I would encourage anybody and everyone to pick up a sport and do something with your life on a sport field, because friendships are formed health wise. You obviously, there's benefits to that. And just I suppose the positive influence of what a good dose of sport does, or oxygen, or just a beer with a mate or whatever, just really uplifts your spirits as a person as well. So yeah, I highly encourage sports. I've grown up on a sports field all my life. It's one of the reasons why I came back to Zim as well. I want to bring my kids up in that type of environment as well, where sports is primary and PlayStations and bloody TV is secondary.
Mm.
Because lifestyle bred on a sport field means at an early age, kids earn and learn the emphasis of teamwork, of discipline, of structure. And that, as much as we maybe love to hate it, and sometimes is what your foundation is to what the rest of your life is going to look like, because that's how it works when you get
Mm.
into the big bad world. So yeah, so sport is good, man. We got to do more as administrators to get our youngsters into sport and get them away from TVs and PlayStations as quickly as possible.
I I could not agree with all that anymore, and could not have put it in a more poetic manner. So I appreciate you for that.
Oh, good.
All right, man. Like I end on three questions, right? They're a little bit left field. They've got nothing to do with sport, but they're very interesting, and it gives us a little dive into your reality that you live in of your life. So, um, if you're ready, I'll jump in.
Yeah, let's go.
Um,
I get to phone a friend or have a 50-50, or how does that work? No?
well, you can phone a friend. Yeah, that'll be. I'll give you a 50-50, but none of them is like a
Yeah.
yes no. So that would
Okay.
work. First one is what's the best life advice you've ever received?
Something I probably could do better at, but don't take life too seriously.
Mm.
Nothing is the end of the world, and the sun will come up tomorrow. So in those deep dark moments, just know that the sun comes up tomorrow, and you'll get through it. Somehow you'll make it work, and you'll make a plan, and it's not the end of the world. And I suppose we as adults can definitely take that to heart, because some days and some moments you do really feel like that. But you look at your kids and you kind of look at how they're young and naive, and how they just enjoy life. They live for the next day, and they're so excitable. We should really try and be that. Try and be a young kid, even if you're in adult moments. just enjoy the ride. Life's too short. You never know if today's your last day. So we should realize that. And then, I like a saying that the sun comes up tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yes, it does. Number 2 is what's the worst piece of life advice you ever received?
Or, I suppose it boils down to a bit of a work ethic. And I say worst, but it turned out to be positive. But you come from an environment where you potentially have everything on a plate, and then if you grow up of a point of privilege, potentially in Africa or wherever you are in the world, you potentially sometimes take things for granted. And I suppose the worst thing you could do, or the worst advice, is to take your privilege, or take your environment, or take the opportunities you've been given for granted, because it can change in an instance. So I don't know if that quite answers, but I think, the worst situation you can do as a person, as a human being, is think that everything around you is just, you just have it and you take it for granted. Whereas, tomorrow you could wake up and it's all gone, and you kind of have to start from the beginning. And I use a situation where I left Zim, and I played a bit in Germany, and I got injured, and I moved to Cape Town, and I had about 200-300 rand to my name. And my missus, my wife now, but then we were dating, and we've kind of managed to pay rent, but we lived on soup and bread and juice for the first month or two when we moved to Cape Town. That's what we lived on. It was soup and juice, Oros, I think it was called. And in those moments, those dark moments, again, you realize, even though I've come from somewhere of a point of privilege, nobody cares. You're now in the big bad world. Who cares who you think you are? You're in the rat race, so to speak, and you're going to have to grind. And that's thankfully what I did. And the attitude of flight or fight type of kind of kicks in most of our cases. And I decided to fight and give it a go. And, it all kind of worked out in the end. But it's nice to also share that story with people to inform them that, everybody comes from somewhere. It doesn't matter your circumstance, it doesn't matter where you started, but you determine your destiny as well, if you're prepared to fight it. So the worst thing someone could say in closing is, everything's going to be okay, and you can take things for granted, and you deserve something, because nobody deserves anything. You earn it.
That's beautiful. And 200-300 rand, man, that's tuppence. That won't get you anything, man. Holy shit.
The first thing I did, it was 2007. The first thing I did on my first paycheck after that, it was April 2007. I remember clearly. It was the World Cup. It was about to start. June came around. First thing I did is I bought myself a TV, and I bought myself DSTV, what they call in South Africa. And I managed to afford that, and still probably ate soup and bread, but I managed to get the World Cup, and I managed to watch the rugby on my TV and my dish. So priorities, right?
Yeah. You got to watch the games.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, you got to support home.
My first purchase.
That's
was
it.
A TV and
that's class. Last question is 3 words you tell your younger self.
Sure, on the spot. Attitude, friendship, and perseverance. If you have those 3 things around you, and the right attitude, don't be a neck boy, stay positive, keep your head down, just understand who you are, what you're trying to achieve, keep trucking on. Positive mindset makes the world of a difference. I think friendships, people are too lonely these days and stuck in their own bubbles. And if you've got solid friends around you, at least people with the right mindset and the positive mindset as well, that can really pull you out of dark times. And we all go through those as people and as a human race. So a solid friendship base around you, the right people, and not bad people, but the right people that will influence your life in the right direction. And then perseverance, just don't give up. That old analogy of that guy digging, and he kind of turns around, the one guy gives up and the other guy digs, and there was the gold right there. So you just don't know when your break is coming, potentially as a businessman, as a sportsman, just even at whatever it takes, even in relationships, just keep persevering at it. And if it means something to you, dig deep and keep going, because your break could be just around the corner.
That's beautiful. Thank you, bro.
Cheers, Root. No worries.
I appreciate it, man. And I cannot wait to see what you do with that group of fellas.
Yeah, so if guys want to follow our journey, the link or the handles are all at Sables, Zimbabwe Sables. So you can find us on all our social channels, and quite active on the Instagrams and all the rest of it. So that's quite cool. And we're building a little documentary as well of our journey. So should we qualify for the World Cup, we'll probably release something along those lines, like the Chasing the Sun, but our version. But if we don't, we might have to save it for another day. But so there might be a nice little documentary coming out one of these days soon on our journey, and maybe quite a nice insight into the life of a sportsman, but not a professional, an amateur sportsman trying to make his way in African sport. So if we can get that together, that'd be quite a cool little story. But thanks for your support. Thanks for joining us, or letting me join you at least. And we look forward to good things to come. And
I got you, brother. If you need anything, man, you know where I am. Hit me up, and we'll see if we can do some things. And I'm going to be cheering you on from wherever the fuck I am.
Cool. Just don't send me a United jersey.
I'll send you an England jersey instead, eh?
Liverpool.
Oh, right. That's it.
I saved it for the end of the podcast, so you can kill it now.
Shocking.
Since I was young, Bruce Krobler, because he's the link, yes, with Zim. So we grew up with Bruce. So that's why we all kind of lean towards Liverpool, this side of the world.
Ugh, no excuse. We don't talk about Liverpool.
We all have our vices, eh?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's the worst one. I'll kill you.
No, all fun and games. So we maybe one day we'll go to a United Liverpool game, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds spot on.
Nice one, mate. Well, keep well, Alex, and all the best.
Take it easy, lad.
Cheers, dude.
Peace.
Bye.